Let's run through an updated Browns mock draft after the first week of NFL free agency. Welcome on into the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here, filming this video Friday afternoon. So if the Browns sign a guy at one of these positions, just bear with me. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to dramatically alter any draft strategy since Cleveland does not pick until 54. So let's get right into it, starting with that 54th overall pick, where I had a couple of options in this mock draft. Could have gone wide receiver, but I decided to go linebacker out of Texas A&M, Edgerring Cooper. So let's get to know Edgerring Cooper first. He's 6'2", 230 pounds. He ran a 4.51 40-yard dash. That is incredibly fast for a guy not playing wide receiver. So if you're looking for a supreme athlete at this position, a guy who can stay with players in pass coverage, who can get into holes and tackle running backs, Edgerring Cooper is your man. He is physical, he is violent, and he is fast. And the more I watch him, the more I fall in love with him, and the more I feel like he is a Cleveland Browns, Andrew Berry type linebacker, because they are looking for guys with speed. And Edgerring Cooper is the fastest linebacker in this draft class. Now, if I had to come up with a con, he does have a tendency to be a little bit undisciplined as he maybe looks for the big play from time to time, but can you really fault him? He did a hell of a job of making the big plays. He was the best player on that Aggies defense last year. An off-ball linebacker with 8 sacks, 17 tackles for loss, and 2 forced fumbles. So he's not just going to be a guy that fills in the stat sheet and makes a couple of tackles here or there. He can make some big plays as well. Now, I know Cleveland added a couple of linebackers in the draft, in free agency with Jordan Hicks and Devin Bush, but Hicks signed a 2-year, $8 million contract. That's not really a long-term thing. Devin Bush signed a 1-year deal. JOK is entering the final year of his contract. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that all 3 of these linebackers could potentially be gone in 2025. I don't want to see JOK leave, but if the Browns don't feel like they have enough money to pay him, that may be one of those cap casualties you see from time to time. Also take into account the Browns really need to just draft a linebacker, period. They have not drafted a linebacker since JOK and Tony Fields back in 2021. So they've gone 2 straight drafts without adding a linebacker. I'm sure they'll add one this year. The question becomes, in what round do they add one? And I'd like to see them make it one of their bigger priorities. You can make a solid argument that they should go wide receiver in round 2. But you traded for Jerry Jeudy. You've used some day 2 picks on wide receivers the last few years. I think it'd be a good time to replenish the ranks at the linebacker position. And I just think Edgerring Cooper is an all-around fantastic football player. And I like him more than a lot of the wide receivers we're seeing go around pick 54. And I'd rather go best player available. But what position do you want to see the Browns pick at 54? Is it wide receiver? Is it linebacker? Defensive tackle? Give me your opinion down below in the comment section. Moving on to round number 3, because I couldn't go wide receiver in round 2 due to my love for Edgerring Cooper, I went wide receiver in round 3, Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky. Now, this is definitely towards the bottom of where he could go in the draft. Something he could be a round 2 guy, but we thought that about Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman and other wide receivers last year, and they fell to round 3. So maybe Corley kind of falls under the radar because of the lack of competition he went up against at Western Kentucky. He's 5'11", 210 pounds. He is the Yak King. That is his nickname, yards after catch of the MAC, with 9.2 yards after catch over the last 2 seasons. Now, the con I've got for Corley is he lacks a lot of catches beyond the line of scrimmage. 75% of his receptions last year came within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, according to Dane Brugler at The Athletic. So if you're looking for a player to do a little bit more than just pop screens and kind of gimmicky plays near the line of scrimmage, we don't have a ton of tape on that. Doesn't mean he can't develop into that, right? Players improve when they get to the NFL, but I think that's a reason why he may fall a little bit in the draft, because we haven't seen that downfield play out of Corley. But he was definitely very productive for the Hilltoppers last year, right? 984 yards, 12.5 yards per reception, 11 touchdowns. He is one of the speediest, quickest, fastest guys in this draft. And when I look at the Browns wide receiver room, they just seem to have a pattern for players they are recently acquiring, right? After going Cedric Tillman and David Bell, kind of slower-ish guys in the draft last 2 seasons, maybe they balance this one out with going a speedier, twitchier type of receiver, more the Elijah Moore, Jerry Jeudy type of family in this year's draft. Plus, you guys know the rules by now. If we're picking a third-round guy for the Browns, it's got to be a wide receiver. Anthony Schwartz, David Bell, Cedric Tillman. The show goes on. It's Malachi Corley this year in round number 3. We've got 3 more picks to check out, but first, make sure you lock yourself in for the best Browns draft coverage all offseason long. I'm trying to get to 34,000 subscribers before the draft, so if you have not subscribed yet, I invite you to go ahead and do so. Moving on here, Cleveland does not have a 4th-round pick, but they do pick again in round 5, not twice anymore after the Jerry Jeudy trade. And with this selection, I go running back Will Shipley out of Clemson. Keep in mind during mock drafts, you don't always get the player necessarily that you want because, there's 31 other teams picking. But when I was selecting, Will Shipley was available, and I felt like the Browns shouldn't wait any longer to go get a running back. 5'11", 206 pounds. The pro I've got for Shipley is an extremely versatile back. If you're like, where do I know and recognize Will Shipley from? Let's just kind of call out the elephant in the room. He was the really good white running back at Clemson. I know, they are unicorns. But Will Shipley might be the next Toby Gerhart for all we know. Extremely versatile, though. Experienced player, down with Dabo Swinney for a good chunk of time. He was just a playmaker for Clemson. If the Brown Tiger, who I've not seen in ages, is watching right now, he will vouch that Will Shipley is a very well-rounded back that can do a lot of what you're going to ask out of him. Now, the con is he kind of lacks the vision. You know what I mean? Like, I think in college there is a tendency for running backs to get the ball and run as fast as they can north and south. Whereas when you get to the pros, you can see that vision of backs being a little bit more patient, waiting for the hole to develop, and then jumping through it. It's something Nick Chubb has a master degree in. So last year for the Clemson Tigers, he averaged 5 yards a pop, 827 yards, 5 touchdowns. He doesn't necessarily stand out super duper well at any one spot. He's a very versatile athlete. He's quick, he's fast. He's not slow by any means, but I don't know if he's got one trait that really wows you. So I think that's why he falls to round 5. Now, when you look at the running back depth chart for Cleveland, Jerome Ford and Nyheim Hines, they appear to be slated to be this team's leading ball carriers until Nick Chubb returns. And that's the big question. When do you get Nick Chubb back? I hope the Browns have an okay idea, right? However, when you get surgery on your knee in November, which is when Chubb had his second surgery, there's good reason to believe that could be a 10 to 12-month recovery. And if it's closer to 12 months, you're talking about not having Nick Chubb for the first 8 to 10 weeks of the season. And if that's the case, well, then you've got Jerome Ford and Nyheim Hines to rely on. And I don't want to rely on Jerome Ford and Nyheim Hines, right? Jerome Ford last year, 813 yards. It felt like half of those yards came from the big run against the Steelers and also against the Indianapolis Colts. You remove those 2 big plays from him, and all of a sudden that average plummets. Meanwhile, Nyheim Hines, he missed all of 2023 after getting into a jet ski accident over the summer last year. But the last time he played football in 2022 with the Bills and the Colts, where we had that Zach Moss-Nyheim Hines trade go down, he had 33 rushing yards and 241 receiving yards. So a good receiving back, and I think that definitely complements Nick Chubb well, but how long until you get Nick Chubb back, right? So it could be Jerome Ford, Nyheim Hines, and maybe a rookie like Will Shipley for the first 4 weeks. I want to envision that if there is a expected return range for Nick Chubb of like, hey, you're going to be back in 10 to 12 months. If I was a betting man on sports injuries and we're talking Nick Chubb, I would put a lot of money down on him being closer to 10 compared to 12 because it's Nick Chubb. He's literally one of the best overall athletes in the National Football League. Fast forward round number 6. I'm going to go tight end at this spot. We're going to go Jaheim Bell out of Florida State. Jaheim Bell, I think, is a very good pass-catching tight end. Now, he is a little bit on the smaller end, 6'2", 241 pounds. He's not a very consistent blocker, and that's something that's going to irritate NFL coaches because this is not college football. Like, you can't win on talent alone at this level, and so they're going to want to see a little bit more from Bell, and that's why I think he's likely a later day 3 guy. But he's got great speed when it comes to the open field. He's just got a knack, after watching a lot of his film, for knowing where the first down marker is and getting to the first down marker, right? A reliable player for a coach who started off at South Carolina, then transferred down to Florida State. Last year for the Seminoles, 39 grabs, 503 yards, 2 touchdowns. And you just think about the Browns tight end room that's really top-heavy. David Njoku played the best year of his NFL career because who doesn't love a good year 7, year 8 breakout season? But after that, you've got Jordan Akins, an older guy that didn't really contribute much last season, and then Giovanni Ricci, who they added in free agency. I think the Browns could definitely stand to add more to this tight end room in the draft. 5th and final pick, because remember, they lost a 5th and a 6th from the Jerry Jeudy trade. I'm going to go offensive line, Andrew Raym out of Oklahoma, an interior guy that at this point in the draft, let's just be honest, we hardly recognize any of these names unless they went to one of our favorite colleges. But if I think back to previous Browns drafts, there was a bit of a habit of, let's go beef up the offensive line, especially when you think about Ethan Posick, Joel Petonio, Wyatt Teller, 3 guys that are approaching towards the end of their contracts. You lose Nick Harrison free agency. Maybe this is the next fullback for the Browns after all. So that's why I decided to go interior offensive line at this spot. Now, grade my mock draft for me. Would you give it an A, a B, C, D, or F? I'll be honest, I don't think you can give my mock draft an A. When you pick 54th overall for the first time, it's really hard to get an A grade, right? But I think this is a solid B-, B draft. I love Edgerring Cooper. I think Malachi Corley could be a really fun spark catalyst on this offense. And after that, I mean, we're not picking until day 3. It's hard to find sure things at that stage in the draft. So I'd give myself a B, B-. And unless anyone is kind of tweaking with the PFF mock draft simulator, which is what I use, you're not going to find a home run guy at pick 54. To wrap up the show, let's pick a card. I've got producer Cullen yet again. Cullen!
What up?
What are you thinking, buddy?
I'm thinking 7 of spades.
7 spades? I like it. I just picked 5 guys. 5 guys. Good restaurant. I'm going to go with dramatically overpriced. I'm going to go with 5 of diamonds. Back-to-back, 4 of hearts. Unbelievable. All right, boys and girls, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will see you all later.